Nutrition Hero Podcast. Igniting both the art and the science of functional medicine. Here's your host, Dr. Brad Watts.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the next episode of the Nutrition Hero Podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Watts. Thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm excited because I have a pre-recorded interview with a gentleman I met a few years ago now. This guy is a world-class clinician. This guy is an author, public speaker, and he is changing the game right now when it comes to how providers in the functional medicine space look at DNA. Yes, I'm talking about Dr. Ben Lynch, and if you are somebody that is a veteran to the Nutrition Hero Podcast, you've been listening for a while, you know that we've referenced his work quite often, and so I'm glad and honored to welcome to the podcast Dr. Ben Lynch today. So we're going to get into that interview momentarily. First and foremost, one, if you are a new subscriber, thank you for our new subscribers. We're glad to see those numbers, the subscription numbers rising, and it just tells us that we're doing a good job of spreading this message. So share it with your friends, hit 5-star rating, thumbs up on YouTube if you're a subscriber there, and we would love to continue to connect with you. So, all right, without any further ado, let's get into the interview with Dr. Ben Lynch. Take it away. Dr. Ben Lynch. Dr. Lynch, thank you for being on the program today.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Doc.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're talking about chronic disease, obviously, and we're talking about what people can do to change their life. And I'm excited for your message. I think people are ready for it finally. And so I want to get into it. My first question for you is, in your opinion, why are we seeing chronic disease get worse and worse over time here in the United States, even though our technology is getting better and better? Where in the world is this coming from?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask the question like that, because I just came back from a conference and I had a slide. Well, first of all, I talked about how I was working with this one patient and why she was chronically ill, and we were seeing all this chronic disease. Yet we have all this access to information and all this technology, right? It's just skyrocketing. But with all this access to information, we're constantly learning and constantly feeling behind, and then the application of common sense is going down. So it was actually a cartoon saying that we're going to be the most well-informed extinct species on the planet.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a lack of common sense, and I think it's a combination of not, I wouldn't say a lack of common sense. Common sense isn't common practice, as Brendan Bouchard says. So I think we're seeing such a big move towards genetic testing and specialized testing and biohacking and what supplement can I take versus going to bed on time versus, avoiding the things that you should avoid. I really think it lays down into that.
Absolutely. Are you seeing that with your patient base right now as well? Are you seeing that more of your job is to educate them on making good choices, or is it problem solving and biohacking and the genetics, all of that?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't see patients anymore, but I still work with a number of individuals, and I see enough what's happening currently. As a father of 3 boys, I'm seeing it. And it's when I first started out using genetics, I assumed that I never would assume. I would do the fundamentals, and then I would add in supplementation, and then I would never really biohack. I'm not a biohacker, and I don't really believe in biohacking. But I think the biggest issue is the fundamentals. And when people practice the fundamentals, even though they're boring in the routine, they work. And if somebody gets their genetic test back and they say, "Doc, how do I fix MTHFR?" It's like by eating leafy green salad and avoiding folic acid and going to bed. So
bringing it back down to the fundamentals. If you had to give fundamentals to somebody that's dealing with chronic disease, whether it be arthritis or an inflammatory issue, diabetes, an autoimmune condition, what are 4 or 5 of the fundamentals that you want people to look into?
I have a great free PDF download that was a bonus chapter in Dirty Genes, and it still is. And I wanted to include in the book, but my publisher is like, nah, Ben, it's already too long. And I call it the ABCs of clean genes. And so there's ABCs, there's 26 letters in the alphabet, I think. And so A is avoid. So for the fundamentals, I really believe that a lot of people think A is to add. Let's add something to my life. Let's add a supplement or add a biohack or add a device. I love the Aura Ring, but is it essential? No. But I want people avoiding things, number one. So what does that mean? Avoiding toxic relationships. That just your mind just gets in a funk, and that mind triggers all of these chemicals, and it just dirties your genes super fast. Avoiding the news. Why watch it? It's negative. I learn what's going on from people around me, and I don't need to read that or listen to it. And then the B is breathe. Well, avoid chemicals too. Filter your air, or if you're not filtering your air, at least when you're driving your car, put it on recycle. If you're going up a hill or you're not in a country road, recycle your air in the car and avoid chemicals. Use your hood when you're cooking so you're not breathing all the exhaust. So avoid chemicals. And then B is breathe. We're not breathing. We're not breathing. And I, for one, when I was reading an article about email apnea, where people were actually holding their breath, they did this research study where they were watching people on the internet read. And they talked about how there's a new thing called email apnea where people were holding their breath while reading. I was like, well, that's stupid. And then I realized I wasn't breathing. So I was holding my breath because you're so focused. So breathe. And if you have your mouth open, if you're a mouth breather, and I invite you to walk around and look how many mouth breathers there are out there. It's staggering. And if you're mouth breathing, you have a dirty nos 3, as I describe in the book, and that'll lead to cold hands. If you have cold hands, you're not breathing right. C is chew your food. And I mean like chew your food. Pick up your fork or your spoon, take a bite, put the utensils down. You don't have your phone on your table. There's no phone on the tables at this house. And even I'm about 99% good. When I'm traveling by myself, sometimes I'll have the phone out. But chew your food. And then D is, forget what D is. I forget, but there's 3.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this is a PDF that people can access at your website, I would imagine?
Yeah. So you can just type, I think it's Dirty Genes bonus chapter in Google,
Okay.
and it'll pop up. My team can provide you the link too, so you can share that.
Absolutely.
But it's a great chapter, and it gives people very simple, empowering, hopeful things that they can do without spending money, because there's all this, that health is expensive. And to me, health doesn't have to be expensive. Yes, you can improve it by getting an air filter and a water filter and all these things, but the reality is you should not have to spend a ton of money. You just need to avoid a lot of things.
Very cool. So right now, what's your area of focus? I know we talked a couple of weeks ago at a conference. I know what you have coming up, but I would like to share with the audience here. What's your area of focus? What are you working on to expand your influence?
Yeah, that's a great question. And boy, I'll go into the future a bit on that one. Decide what I'm currently working on, and what I'm going to be working on is I really believe in optimizing the lives of unborn children. And that comes from preventing chronic disease that a child may be born into from the man and the woman not doing the things that they should do and ideally should do prior to conception and during pregnancy and immediately post-pregnancy for the child. So there's all this focus and attention on infertility, which is great. And there's all this focus on, having a pregnancy last full term, which is also great. Totally on board with that. But then the baby is born and everyone celebrates. Well, then the baby is, kind of left to its own devices, and it's not getting what it needs. And it probably didn't get the ideal nutrition, especially if the man or woman were infertile in the first place, or they had recurrent miscarriages. There was something going on that was dirtying the womb or dirtying the man the sperm and so on, and the egg. And just that whole environment was not ideal. So I feel my job as a naturopathic physician is to prevent disease, and that starts in the womb. And so that those tools that are going to help with that are looking at genetic. So we're building a genetic test, which will look at over 1,000 variants that we all have, which is a lot of information and not much common sense.
Right.
But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be demonstrating and say, hey, look, you have these genes, these genetic variants, and they do lead to these susceptibilities. And these are the common practices that you should be doing to make sure you actually do not have these problems or pass these problems down to your kid or yourself. And so by identifying these susceptibilities genetically, it will empower the individual, I believe, to take the appropriate common sense, practical, affordable actions in their life, and knowing that they really have to do it because they are genetically made up a little bit weaker in some areas.
Absolutely. That is amazing, by the way. Where did the advent of this start with? Is it something that you've been thinking about for a decade or two, or is it something that just spurred on?
No, it's been a decade. Has it been a decade? Dang near a decade. So I think 2010 is when I got excited. I watched the video Tale of Two Mice. I talk about it in the beginning of Dirty Genes. And the Tale of Two Mice is where they had genetically identical mice, and they gave them, they were genetically susceptible. Okay, I did a good job in my book, but it's been a while since I talked to them. So basically, there was a mother had babies, rat babies, and really cute fuzzy ones, and they gave the mother methylated nutrients like folate and genistein and B12 and so on. And another group did not get those. And this rat mother was genetically predisposed to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. Okay. And all her babies were susceptible as well, right? Because of that, because of her weak genes. Well, the babies never got them. They never got them. So she was susceptible to all these bad things. And we hear about that all the time. It's like, oh, my dad or my grandma died of cardiovascular disease, or they died of cancer, or, we have a mix in our family and I'm next. But no, it doesn't have to be that way. And when I saw that video that they went on through their whole life not getting any of these conditions, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I've been positioning myself slowly that way, because you can't just take those nutrients and think that's the magic sauce and you're fine. Because a lot of men and women have such dirty genes that supplementation isn't just going to clean them up. Okay. So you have to identify which genes are dirty, clean those, and then work on other genes that are going to be problematic during pregnancy, and then fix those and not fix them, but support them. And so it's been a process, and it'll be a decade. Yeah.
That's amazing though, because that's like talking about taking care of people that you'll never meet. And
That's right.
I think that is phenomenal.
I never looked at it that way. That's pretty cool.
That's a situation that requires a lot of foresight. I'll just say that. So that's awesome. Very cool.
Well, thank you.
In your experience, where does your passion come from for helping people? Is there like a seminal moment in your life where you're like, this is what I'm doing? Where does this fire come from to dig into the things that nobody else is looking at?
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up on a horse ranch, a 100-acre horse ranch, and we had about 44 horses, and it was a hunter jumper breeding operation. So we had, a lot of birth, a lot of death, and we had reproductive issues with the mares. And I remember I always wanted to get into reproductive health, because I was always fascinated that a mare couldn't get pregnant, and then the vet came and gave some injections, and bang, they got pregnant. And it's like, wow, that's interesting. I didn't like the way they went around it, but, because they just gave a bunch of hormones and steroids. But anyway, I was always fascinated with that. I would say the Tale of Two Mice has got me really excited. Bruce Lipton got me really excited. I always thought that I was destined to my genes. My stepmother told me that I was going to be a schizophrenic at some point. And I know she didn't say that. She said, our family genetics, or your family's genes are susceptible to alcoholism and schizophrenia. And I just thought someday I was going to wake up, sucking down a bunch of alcohol and being a schizophrenic, and it scared the heck out of me. I do not like, let me rephrase that. I love seeing people healthy and thriving. And it really pains me to see people struggling. And my kids will come home and they'll say, Dad, I saw this child, this kid in school was struggling and he had these symptoms, and they describe what's going on. They say, can you fix them? I say, yeah. And now, and I say, yeah, probably. And now, I'm not seeing patients anymore, but I have friends of my kids, their parents are coming to me and saying, hey, can you help my kid? And, one had seizures, another one can't eat anything, another one is what have you. And so I'm helping them. And when I'm also a soccer coach, and I see kids on my 10-year-old son's team struggling with asthma or exercise-induced asthma or eczema, or, I see the rashes on their arms. I'm like, I can help these kids. So when you know something, right, you have the same thing. You see people and they're struggling, like, God, I could help them. And so what can you do to help a lot of people on a grand scale at the same time while you're maintaining your own health and your family's health?
I think that's really important, the way that you put that, and helping people while also maintaining your ability to help people. That's huge.
Yes.
That's huge. So chronic disease in the United States has had a long and kind of a sordid history. Medically speaking, both natural healthcare and traditional medical model. Where do you think that healthcare is headed over the next decade for these people that are dealing with arthritic conditions, autoimmune disease, diabetes, gut issues, etc.? Is it going to be customizable? Is it going to be organized to the patient or to the condition? What do you see?
That's a great question. And I have to say that I'm in total alignment with Jeff Bland, Dr. Jeff Bland, thinking on this. He's founded Institute of Functional Medicine and has done a lot for medicine and patient. And I believe that large corporations like Amazon, Walmart, Apple, Google are going to be creating something for the masses, and it's going to be reducing the need for people to go see their doctor for everyday common ailments or chronic disease. And I think that actually people are so fed up with the current medical paradigm that they're attending summits like yours, because they know that they can glean way more information from interviews like ours right now and others that you're doing than they can going to the doctor and being spent 5 minutes not being heard, and take this to make your symptom and yourself go away because I'm too busy because I got 80 other patients in the lobby waiting. So people are sick and tired of it, and the medical industry knows that they're sick and tired of it. They don't know what to do. They can't transform quickly enough. And I will say that conventional medicine is fantastic and it's needed. My wife just had a hip resurfacing surgery. Awesome. You can't do that. I can't do that. You need specialists. But chronic disease, Chris Kresser says, I think is affecting over 70% of the population. So I think it's going to be coming from the patient. I think health coaches are on the rise. I used to think that was bad, but I think now it's great. And I think that having people certified to help people in the basics and the fundamentals before that they think that they have to go see a doctor and spend all this money and get worse. I think health coaching is great. And I think devices like the Oura Ring are also going to be helping people maintain their own health, because you start taking actions. And let me show you what happened on my Oura Ring yesterday. Okay. So it told me to take it easy. And then what I did is I went to bed, bam, right? So I went to sleep and I took care of it. I could have been sick. I could have had Karen email you today, and
That's right.
Dr. Lynch can't do it because he's sick. But devices like this are like, punching me in the face is like, you got high blood or high body temperature, go to bed. So I think that's where it's going.
Absolutely. I think that's really cool too, to be able to come from a position where you look at the genetics, you look at devices that tell you about who you are physically, and being able to put those things together is going to make a real big difference for people here in the future. One of the things that I appreciate that you do is you talk a lot about epigenetics, and you mentioned this a couple of minutes ago. You're not a slave to your DNA, and can you explain a little bit about that for people? You talk about supporting people that have dirty genes, etc. What he's talking about is epigenetics, and can you kind of give a little bit of a picture for that?
Yeah, certainly. So let's say that a job of one of your genes is to get rid of histamine. Okay, let's say you have allergies and your nose is running like crazy, or you have exercise-induced asthma, which is also histamine related, or you're laying in bed and you're counting the spots on your ceiling, which you should clean, but you don't, and there's cobwebs up there, and it's 2 a.m. and you're still staring at them. That could be also histamine. You got eczema or urticaria going on, and that could be histamine. You eat, citrus-based foods or drink red wine, and you don't feel right. That could be histamine. So you have all these histamine-related issues. And so there are genes which are designed to help your body get rid of that histamine. So their job is to take the histamine and break it down, okay? So for some reason, your histamine breakdown genes are dirty. Doesn't mean they're broken. It means they're dirty. So if I take my right hand and it's clean and I go to type, I'm all good. If I stick my hand in a jar of honey, right, and now I try to type, not so good. So basically it's bathing your genes in sticky stuff that could be gummed up from glyphosate. It could be heavy metals from your drinking water. Arsenic is all over your drinking water. Arsenic slows down your genes, which break down histamine. If you're vitamin B12 deficient, either from taking antacids, being a vegan or vegetarian, or being stressed out when you eat, or other reasons, H. pylori, then being B12 deficient is not going to be able to help your genes break histamine down. So all these things are little tiny things that you've probably known about, but you don't know that they're connected to helping your genes do the work that they need to do. So by consuming B12, you're supporting your genes. By avoiding chemicals, you're supporting your genes so they can work. If I had, this in front of me, you couldn't see me, right? It's not going to work. So by moving it, we can get some stuff done. So again, letter A in the ABCs of Dirty Genes book, avoid. And by avoiding things that make your genes dirty, they remain clean. And so they can get rid of things like histamine. And I discuss histamine a lot in Dirty Genes book in the DAO chapter.
Very cool. Which you can find, by the way, at drbenlynch.com, drbenlynch.com. One of the things that you do is you write in a way that's very digestible for a non-medical mind. And I appreciate that. It makes it accessible for everybody. And you're a pretty good storyteller, too. I have to say that. When you're telling stories, are you thinking of patients that you've seen in the past? Are you
Absolutely.
ever do that?
Yeah, I'm thinking of patients I've seen in the past. And I've, as a father of, I've been a dad now for almost 16 years. And 16 years plus if you count in utero, right, of my wife protecting the womb. And so I've got a lot of dad kid stories that have to do with sickness or injury or avoidance or arguments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you look back on your career and specifically with chronic disease, is there a specific patient or a specific ailment that stands out to you as like, that one was my arch enemy and I am so glad that I was able to help that person overcome it? Is there anything like that in your life?
Boy, I would say pretty much any chronic disease has been, and helping the individual overcome that has been such a rewarding feeling. I mean, I remember when I was working with someone, and they called me up to work with them, and it was a 9-year-old boy. And anytime you help guide the individual, I don't want to say remove because it's not me removing it, it's them removing it. So anytime you can help guide a patient or an individual to become their best self that's ever been there, that's awesome. And anytime you move a barrier to freedom, freedom is right there. It's right there. They know it, they see it, their brain is fully aware of what they can do, but they can't do it. Autistic kids can't speak. People in wheelchairs can't walk. And so this 9-year-old kid was in a wheelchair, and his play date was have a friend come over. Parents would pick him up, prop him against a tree, and lean him there, and they would play catch with his friends while he's leaning against the tree, and he'd go back in his wheelchair. And that was horrible. And so after like a few weeks, we got him so much better. This was drug induced. It started with antibiotics. Actually, it started with antacids at a young age, and heavy hitting meds and recurrent antibiotics. So I basically just helped his gut and restored his mitochondria. And they went to Disneyland because he was feeling so well, so good. And parents rented a wheelchair, and the kid was like, "Dad, Mom, I don't need that." And so they emailed me and said, "We rented the wheelchair just in case," but he was off and running. He was a kid again. So stories like that, just of any type, And I was actually at the conference where I met you, and there was a long line of people waiting for getting me. So I was signing their book, and a couple came up holding their baby, and they said, "This is a Dr. Lynch baby. You helped us get pregnant." So it's just all types.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. I love it. So specifically, when we're talking about infertility or something like that, what are some of the common things that you see with people that are shutting off their ability to conceive?
I would say stressors would be a big one, and stressors ties into nutrient deficiency. So when you're stressed out, that is like putting gas on a fire. And when you're having so look back at a time where you made a big bonfire, right? And it's just roaring. And what happens to the wood in a roaring fire? Burns out fast. You got to restock it. You got to keep putting more wood on because that fire is roaring. And so when people's genes are on fire because they're stressed out, they're exposed to chemicals, they're not sleeping, they're eating poorly, and they're just ripping flames. Well, they're burning through their firewood. They're burning through their protein. They're burning through their B12s and folates and antioxidants, and they become nutrient deficient. And so unless you stop being this roaring fire and start just being a normal simmering flame, burning consistently throughout the day, conserving your energy and supporting your genes, the body is going to say, well, you're going to be infertile because you don't have enough firewood to burn for yourself and a developing baby and a developing placenta. There's no way. So we're going to make you infertile. So it makes sense.
Absolutely. When you are looking at a case like that, how often do you see people reverse that type of a situation?
Often. And it's the depleted go people typically, or it's the people that have undergone some type of serious chronic illness or in a current chronic illness, and they want to get pregnant because they're concerned about the clock of, I'm in my upper 30s, I have to get pregnant. But meanwhile, I have inflammatory bowel disease or have an autoimmune condition or what have you. And so they're focusing on the clock rather than the environment of their womb and their body. Because what you have is not going to be supporting the developing baby at all. And then as a father or a mother of that child, let's say that you were put on, anti-inflammatories and steroids and hormone replacement, or in vitro, artificial fertilization or whatever you want to call it, IVF treatments. Then the womb was not ideal, right? It was chemically forced, which, hey, I completely get it. I'm fortunate enough to my wife and I had 3 natural births and natural pregnancies, and I wish that for everyone. But just know that if you go through IVF treatment, that your body is missing something, and that you should try to find it. And you should try to listen to someone like this, and you should try to find a functional medicine doctor or a naturopathic doctor and find what's missing. So then you can naturally get pregnant and go to and have birth. And I will tell you many times as well, they were vegan or vegetarian. And I'm totally on board with that too. But just know that it can be depleting you. And there are ways to be a super healthy vegan or a super healthy vegetarian. It's just harder.
Harder. How often do you see somebody able to be successful at being a vegetarian or a vegan?
I have not seen them long term, but I remember when I rowed for the Huskies, University of Washington, rowing is a extremely hard sport. And there was a guy on my crew team. He was not in the top 3 boats, but he was still rowing, and he was fit and strong. His technique wasn't good, which is why he wasn't in the top boats, but he was super fit and healthy. At least he appeared to be healthy. He was in his, young 20s. But I don't know how he's doing now.
Yeah, hopefully he's not listening to this part.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he is.
Yeah.
But he seemed fit, and he kicked my butt in running. That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So one of the tools that you have available with all of the work that you've done is called Strategene. And this Strategene report is something that I know through my own practice and helping patients has changed the lives of a lot of people. And so first of all, thank you for doing that. And then secondly, people that use this Strategene, how did you intend for it to be used? That's my question.
That's a great question. I intend Strategene to be used, one, to help reduce the amount of genes that you're looking at, because a lot of genetic reports that are out there think more is better, but there's no research behind it. So you're spending a lot of time and you have more fear because you're looking at 70 pages of stuff, and you see, let's say you see a bunch of these reds and yellows and you think these are all problems, and you have 70 pages of this. That's overwhelming. And I will tell you, most of it is irrelevant and there's no research behind it. So you're wasting your time. So try to find reports like Strategene that don't waste your time. So one is time efficiency. 2 is understanding how the genes work, because most genetic reports just show you the genes in isolation, and that's it. And so we tell you if the genes are working faster or slower, what influences them to go faster or slower, and we show the big picture, the diagram. So my intention is for people to understand that genes work with other genes, not by themselves, and I would say most importantly, that they're influenced by the environment, vitamins and minerals and biochemicals. So even if you do not have a genetic variation in a gene, we show things on the diagram that shows, look, this gene is slowed down here because of heavy metals or inflammation or infections. And it requires B12 as well as a nutrient. And so then your doctor runs these labs and look, you have low B12, and yes, we checked your arsenic levels, they're high too, and you have inflammation. So this gene, look, you don't have a genetic variant here, but this gene is not working, which is why you have high homocysteine. So we have to support your infections, we have to support your nutrient deficiencies, and we have to get the inflammation down, which is by getting rid of the infections. So it's a guide to know where to strategically go for the doctor and the end user as well. So it's best used with physicians like yourself or health professionals like yourself to be able to walk through with the individual. And individuals on their own can make some headway, but it is pretty hardcore science there. And it's not meant to, actually another thing is too, there's a lot of genetic reports out there that say you have MTHFR, take this supplement. You have this gene, take that supplement. And so we don't do that. And we have a lot of people that are pissed off at me because I don't tell them what vitamins to take. And it's like, well, you'll be back. and you'll thank me for it after you spent $1,000 on vitamins that didn't work.
That's right. Absolutely. I appreciate the thing about it the most, I think, that I appreciate is the ability to work backwards. So you start with how you're feeling or how you're functioning and work backwards, like you mentioned with homocysteine being elevated. And to anybody that's never heard of Strategene before, it is certainly worth looking at, especially in conjunction with the book Dirty Genes.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Lynch, before we exit here today, is there anything that you would tell somebody that's dealing with chronic disease right now? Anything that you would leave them with?
Yeah, I would say Sachin Patel said it really well, and others have said the same thing. You know, your desire to become healthy starts with your next action. So whatever your next thing that you do, right, like in the next immediate moment, starts your path to health. So by listening to this, by our interview now, you've gleaned some things. Now take action on them. Maybe you're going to avoid the news. Maybe there's a toxic friend that you've been hanging around and you've been doing it because you've known them since high school. But you know what? You've grown and they've regressed. So instead of you always reaching out because you feel obligated, stop calling and feel that freedom, and that your genes won't get dirty from that stress that you hang out, because they're like Eeyore. How you doing? I'm fine, right? So find Tiggers, avoid Eeyores. That's all I got to say.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch, for participating here. And again, website to find the book Dirty Genes, Strategene, and more information on those two topics, go to drbenlynch.com, drbenlynch.com.